What is going on, everyone? Welcome to the Slaw Sports Show. I'm your host, Cole Noble, aka Slaw, and it's not Friday, it's not Slaw Sports Show Saturday. No, today is Thursday, and today we have a special guest joining the show for this weekly episode of the Slaw Sports Show. So we're doing it on Thursday today. Got a vacation coming up over the weekend, so we're getting the show in today on Thursday. So thank you all for tuning in and joining today's episode. And like I said, we have a special guest for today, so I want to go ahead and welcome in Miles Garrett to the show. He is an Elon alum and a good friend, and like you see there, reporter at WSBT 22 and an Atlanta super fan. So Miles, welcome to the Slaw Sports Show.
How's it going? Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great. It's a pleasure. And so Miles, I just real quick, just because in case any of the fans don't know anything, don't know your story, just go ahead and real quick, tell us about who you are, what you do, and what you've been doing.
Sure. Yeah, I'm now a news reporter at WSBT 22, which is a local news station in South Bend, Indiana. And for those of you that don't know where that is, that's where University of Notre Dame is. I was originally here as a sports reporter reporting on pretty much all things Notre Dame athletics, some high school stuff here as well. Before that, I was down in Macon, Georgia as a news and sports reporter. Like Cole was saying, originally from Atlanta, from the Atlanta suburban area, big Atlanta sports fan. And before that, graduated from Elon in 2018, and here we are.
And so that's part of, what I want to talk about first with you, Miles, working with Notre Dame and Notre Dame football. And I think, a lot of changes I think are going to come for the team next year and, this coming season. And I believe it got announced today when their season's going to start up. But losing, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, their main leader on defense, and on offense, their all-time winningest quarterback in Ian Book. So what is this team you think going to look like going into this coming season for Notre Dame football?
Yeah, I mean, you said it, it's definitely going to look a lot different. You're talking about a class that has the most wins pretty much ever in Notre Dame football history, which is saying quite a lot. I know this is a team that got 10 wins, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, 3 of the last 4 seasons, 2 playoff appearances, and like you said, Ian Book, the winningest quarterback of all time at Notre Dame, getting drafted by the New Orleans Saints. Pretty relatively high also, if I had to say so myself. But it's definitely going to be a new look. Notre Dame sort of reached that point now, I think. I know a lot of people may not think this because Notre Dame sort of has this, sort of aura of, it's Notre Dame. They get to the playoff, they get blown out, that sort of thing. They don't play real opponents and that kind of stuff. But I think they've reached the point now, especially with the last 4 years under Brian Kelly, where they're starting to now have that consistency in recruiting that can get them to those stable top 5, not only finishes, but starts every single year, where they're always in that conversation as one of the top 5 teams in the country year in, year out. And I think this past recruiting class showed that, and their future recruiting classes showed that. They're at the quarterback level. I mean, they've got Jack Cohn. He's a guy that was the quarterback for Wisconsin in the Rose Bowl. So some big game experience there. He's the favorite to be the starter for the Irish. Drew Pine is a guy who's been in the system now for 2 years. He's expected to be the backup, but the real headliner and who a lot of people should keep their eye on is Tyler Buckner. He's the true freshman quarterback. Took Ian Book's number 12. He looked probably the most impressive of the 3 in the spring game that just happened a few weeks ago. And he was pretty highly touted recruit. So there's a reason why he's probably going to play and not have a red shirt this season. He, from what I've seen, looks like he's going to be the future of that position. And on the defensive front, new defensive coordinator Marcus Freeman. He lost a lot of talent, but he does have a lot of talent coming back. Myron Tagovailoa, the cousin of Tua, going to sort of headline that defensive front. And Kyle Hamilton, Georgia native, is most likely going to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft next year. 6'4" safety with just unbelievable talent should headline that defense. So, yeah, I mean, they'll go back to playing an independent schedule next year. They won't be in the ACC anymore, but I don't think that's something that will hurt them, because you can make a very strong argument that Notre Dame has played tougher schedules when they play an independent schedule. I mean, this past season, the ACC, let's face it, their toughest opponent was Clemson, and I mean, North Carolina was ranked. They beat a very good. I mean, it's up for debate how good North Carolina was. They were top 25 when they played them. So they beat them pretty handily. But this season you've got some tougher opponents going back to the independent level of play. Again, a lot of ACC play as well. You're going to play Clemson again. I believe Clemson again. I'll have to look at the schedule, but yeah, it should be a tough schedule. They'll finally play USC, so we'll see what they can do and maybe get back to the playoff.
Yeah, and we just talked about and mentioned some of the players they lost, but they are bringing a lot back for this team, and it will be interesting to see. Like you said, now back in the independent schedule outside the ACC, but still playing some tough opponents, USC and also Clemson. So it's going to be interesting to see how Ryan Kelly really gets this entire team and squad together with, like I said, losing top two leaders, I would say, on offense and defense, and Jeremiah and Ian Book. And looking at, I would say the big four really, in my opinion, of their draft picks this year. And I would say Liam Eichenberg, Jeremiah Wusu-Koramoah, Ian Book, and Tommy Tremble, I think, are really the standouts for me when I was going through the draft process, going through my prospect rankings, and just the entire draft. And I feel like all four of those guys landed in great spots. And obviously, I think Jeremiah was the big one because at 52, I said it was a huge steal, probably the arguably biggest steal of the entire draft. Him landing with the Cleveland Browns, the team I said the entire, all my mock drafts that they should have drafted in the first round. And then, the concerns came out, the injury reports finally came out after the draft and all the medicals for him. And that's kind of where we saw the reason for that slide. But with those four guys I mentioned, who do you think will end up having the biggest impact on their NFL roster? Probably let's start now in their rookie year. Not look too forward into their career, but right now, going into their rookie year, which one of these four guys you think will have the biggest impact?
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say Jeremiah Wusu-Koramoah. I mean, he was supposed to be a top 15 to 20 pick before this medical report came out, and I sort of compare it a little bit, maybe not to the same talent level, but sort of when Jalen Smith fell from Notre Dame a few years back. He was arguably a top 5 prospect at that time, but there was some concern about his ACL, and now he's a primetime starter for the Dallas Cowboys. So I think we're going to see something similar with Jeremiah. He's landing in a great situation, as you said, in Cleveland with a defense that I don't know if could get any better, but they did this offseason. Having guys like Clowney, Miles Garrett there, and just a lot of talent on the defensive front. Denzel Ward, very good defensive players. Adding a linebacker of his caliber to that, I think won't add a lot of pressure on him to sort of start immediately and do that, especially getting taken as late as he did. He didn't have sort of that first round pressure to sort of get on the field and make an impact immediately. But he's got the talent to do so. So I think he definitely has the ability to do that. I mean, Ian Book obviously is a big name, but I don't see him personally being a starter in the National Football League. I can see him being, one of the journeyman quarterbacks that sort of floats around the league as a backup for quite some time. But that being said, the Saints are a great fit for him. It's a team that was talking to him for a very long time during the draft process, and obviously Drew Brees out the door, and they kind of flip-flop too. It's kind of funny. Drew Brees is going to be an analyst now for Notre Dame football, and Ian Book now going to the Saints. But he'll have guys like Jameis Winston and forget about the other guy, the wide receiver turning quarterback. Yeah, Taysom Hill. Call him a quarterback if you'd like. But he guys like that. Sean Payton, obviously a very good football mind to learn from. So yeah, I mean, and then you got the offensive linemen like guys like Liam Eichenberg and Aaron Banks who also landed in some pretty good positions. The Buccaneers are very, very well equipped right now, and Tristan Wirfs last year was a great pickup on the offensive line. They've showed that they can draft offensive linemen very well. So Liam Eichenberg was a guy that I thought was going to warrant a first round pick. He ended up almost making it in there with the second round. And Notre Dame sort of turned to this, there's an argument for tight end U, but I think there's also an argument for O-line U. You've got a lot of talent that's come there in the past. His name's, for some reason, escaping me. He's the best offensive lineman in football right now with the Indianapolis Colts. You might have to help me out on this one. I don't know why his name is escaping me. I'll have to come back to that one here in a second. But Notre Dame has been sort of filtering out these offensive linemen for a long time now, and I think guys like Aaron Banks and Liam Eichenberg are going to sort of add to that.
Yeah, I think Liam Eichenberg arguably might have the biggest impact out of these four guys that are on my list. I mean, I know that Jeremiah.
Quentin Nelson. I apologize, Quentin Nelson.
Oh yeah, Quentin Nelson. But I know that Liam Eichenberg, I believe he will have more of an impact on the Miami Dolphins than Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah will have on the Browns, in my opinion. That's my bold take at it, looking at these four players. But I think just adding another huge offensive lineman and a young guy, and not even for this year, but throughout his career and throughout contributing to his team's success, having another guy up front to protect Tua in Miami and a guy like Eichenberg is going to be huge. And like you said, going at 42, he was another guy who could have gone the first round, in Oakland Trophy finalist. A finalist for best offensive lineman in college football. And falling to 42, going over to Miami.
There is an argument, as you were saying, that obviously the Dolphins took Jalen Waddle in the top 10. There was an argument that they should take an offensive lineman in the top 10, and obviously they didn't do that. So getting him there is a position of need. So he's a guy that could start right away.
Yeah, and he's a guy that tagging him along with Austin Jackson, who they drafted in the first round last year. And, I really would have liked to see them with that second pick. Granted, the board didn't fall out that way, but I would have loved to see Elijah Vera Tucker end up in Miami and just be that guard they need. But getting Eichenberg in the second round is even better, I think. And they're still able to add Jalen Phillips to their defensive line with that second pick in the first round. So all in all, it panned out perfectly for the Miami Dolphins. And also, I think that Carolina Panthers at the 83rd pick, getting Tommy Tremble, he's a guy was one of the best blocking tight ends that I had scouted and looked at going into the draft this year, and that's an underrated part of the game, and especially at that position. Now you think about guys like Kyle Pitts coming in that aren't even don't even block half the time anyways when you look at the film on them. But Tommy definitely does, and that's going to be an underrated part of their offense, having him whenever he's in the game, on those heavy run situations, heavy goal line situations, being able to have an extra guy on hands to block is going to be huge for the Panthers too.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, as you said, he wasn't a big pass catcher for Notre Dame. Michael Mayer sort of stole that spotlight, and he's probably going to eventually be a first or second round pick in a couple of years here. But Tommy Tremble, yeah, it definitely is going to make Christian McCaffrey and Sam Darnold smile with his ability to sort of add that dimension to the game. And I love what Matt Rule is currently doing with Carolina, because he's a good offensive mind, and having more blockers, the better, especially with guys like McCaffrey and Sam Darnold, who's really had protectors in his career.
So, excuse me. Looking at the NFL as a whole, just real quick, your thoughts. Is Tampa Bay going to do it again?
Say it one more time.
Is Tampa Bay going to do it again?
Well, I haven't seen any evidence to support another team doing it. I mean, you see Kansas City sort of retool their offensive line, but Tampa Bay is bringing every single person back from that Super Bowl roster. So for me, it's barring any unforeseen injury, I don't see any team taking them down right now. You have so much turmoil in Green Bay at the moment. I apologize for that picture behind you at the moment, but that's really the only NFC team, at this point in time. Obviously you have so many things that can happen during the season, surprise team that starts catching fire at the right time. But it's pretty hard to say right now in the NFC. I mean, the Vikings are bound to rebound a little bit. You look in the NFC North, the NFC East is still unpredictable. It's still kind of a mess, really. Washington, we don't know what we're going to see. Ryan Fitzpatrick's the quarterback right now. And, the NFC South, you've got Tampa Bay, and really no one else at this point. Atlanta's sort of in this weird rebuild. we're not rebuilding thing. The Saints are completely starting over, it appears. They're in cap hell as well. And yeah, I mean, it's sort of just a mess. I mean, the NFC West really looks like the only challenger to Tampa Bay, with all four teams being pretty competitive, and they might just sort of kill themselves during the season. The worst team in that division right now looks to be the Arizona Cardinals, and they don't look to be that bad right now. They had a huge offseason with adding guys like J.J. Watt on the defense, and DeAndre Hopkins coming back, and Kyler Murray a little bit more comfortable in this offense now. And you have the Rams with Matthew Stafford, who is probably going to be an MVP favorite coming into this season. So it's hard to tell right now. The 49ers are returning everybody that was hurt last season. I mean, this is still a Super Bowl roster that they had. Who knows when Trey Lance is going to end up playing? But when Jimmy Garoppolo is healthy, this team's a Super Bowl team. So it's hard to predict. But right now, I'd say Tampa Bay is the favorite, and whoever comes out of the NFC West.
Yeah, and we were, flashback, before Tampa Bay really signed Tom Brady, I would say all the talk was Kansas City is just going to run through the entire league year after year for the next 5 to 10 years, especially after they gave Mahomes that contract. And now Kansas City is not really a team we're really talking about anymore because they're just sitting right there at that upper echelon. But it definitely does seem.
And they're not going anywhere. I mean, let's not confuse that. It's not like they're going anywhere, but Tampa Bay really exposed them a little bit in the Super Bowl, and you can make the case that the MVP of that game was Todd Bowles, the defensive coordinator, who just made Patrick Mahomes uncomfortable all game long. So again, they're not going anywhere. They retooled their offensive line, so it's Patrick Mahomes is going to be here for 15 more seasons.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm not saying that Kansas City's going anywhere. I'm just saying they're still at that top tier echelon, you would say, but it definitely does seem like Tampa Bay is just still a sliver above them, even after what they did, because of the fact they brought everybody back and then some with what they added through the draft. And, they still haven't, they didn't really make any offseason additions, but getting all the draft picks in, they added a guy like Giovanni Bernard, who that's going to help out Tom Brady immensely. Having a guy that can actually catch a ball out of the backfield is going to put a smile on Tom Brady's face, day one.
For sure.
And it's just Tampa Bay just seems like that team, unless Green Bay pulls something out of nowhere and brings Rodgers back and starts making some last minute moves, which I'm not personally going to rule out. But looking more and more unlikely as the days go along. But Tampa Bay, they definitely look like they could be that team. Again this year until someone else comes up and challenges them. But Kansas City definitely still up there, and I mean, as of right now, I'd say we'd probably end up getting a rematch.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see anything else to disagree with it. I mean, the AFC, the Bills are on the come up, so they could potentially be a threat. They addressed a really strong need as far as the pass rush is concerned in the draft. Again, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, they're still there. So that's still a very strong team coming out of the AFC. And who knows, maybe the Browns might finally put it together. They've got a Super Bowl roster. I mean, it is what it is. They just need to execute it. I mean, they have Chubb at the peak of his powers. They've got Baker Mayfield finally playing with some command. And, that defense I think you make the case of the best defense in football right now, maybe behind Tampa Bay. So if they can keep it together, then who knows? I mean, the Ravens are still there. The Bengals are on the come up. I wouldn't call them a playoff team yet, but I mean, again, everybody's getting better, so you never know.
So while we're in the NFL, we'll just go ahead and jump right to it. And we see it on your shirt, and it says it below you. You're an Atlanta super fan, which of course means an Atlanta Falcons fan, and that's the talk of the whole town right now is the Atlanta Falcons and their star franchise leading wide receiver, Julio Jones. What are your thoughts on the situation, Miles? Is Julio going to go or is he staying?
Well, I think that phone call by Shannon Sharp indicates that he is, in fact, out of here. And now that call has come out, it sort of points to what's been happening all along. It looks like the Falcons and Julio had sort of had this sort of arranged for quite some time under the guise of cap issues, which it still is. I mean, the Falcons are in cap hell right now, and and losing Julio Jones would sort of alleviate a little bit of that cap hit. But it appeared before that call was made like it was going to be under that guise, because I think a lot of Falcons fans could get behind the idea or the notion that Julio, his days in Atlanta might be numbered because of the cap hit, because of his age, just all those things sort of coinciding together. The call, I think, just made it seem, like Julio has this beef against Atlanta, which I don't know if he does. Maybe he does. But it was very out of character for who he has been for his entire career. He's always stayed out of trouble. He's always been very great with the media, very great with the fans, that type of thing. So I think it just came across the wrong way a little bit. But regardless, there was a report today that showed that Julio Jones, there's a first round pick on the table currently for Julio Jones. If that's the case, I think it's impossible to say no if you're the Atlanta Falcons front office, and impossible to sort of dispute that if you're an Atlanta Falcons fan. I mean, again, he's 32 years old. He really can never stay healthy anymore. He gives you about 8 to 9 games a season and misses the rest. And again, it's not like it'd be. I mean, obviously Julio Jones is one of the greatest Falcons of all time. It'd be a huge loss just in that regard. And he's still when healthy, he's a top 3 receiver in this league. It's just getting him healthy. But as far as his production is concerned, it makes a little bit more sense why Kyle Pitts was that pick, just to sort of replace the production that you're going to lose when you lose a Julio Jones, and sort of replacing him with another freak type athlete who can catch balls and do sort of the same things that Julio did. So again, it all depends on the return. From what I'm seeing right now, I'd say a 99% chance that Julio Jones played his last game as an Atlanta Falcon. If that return ends up being a number 1 pick, then I can get behind that.
Excuse me. You mentioned the tweet from this morning. I actually got it pulled up on the stream so everyone on YouTube can see it. It's from Diana Rossini with ESPN. She said the Falcons have discussed several trade offers for Julio Jones, including an offer for a future first-round pick. And the sense around the league is that a trade could go down as early as next week. So some people are saying, like Diana Rossini said this morning, that offers have included a future first-round pick. I don't know if people are just putting that out there to encourage teams to come out and saying other teams are doing it, we need to do it too. Because as the day went on, it looked like the consensus is a second and third pick for Julio Jones, which for a guy who, given his age, given his durability, is still a top 3 wide receiver in the National Football League today. With anything about him, I would say. So giving up a second or third round pick for this guy, there's not first round picks getting drafted who are even as good as Julio Jones. And there haven't been since Julio Jones. So why is even second and third, even a first, in my opinion, why would a team not call immediately and get, I feel like 30 out of the 32 teams should be in the market to land Julio Jones. And I feel like there's not as much activity, I think, right now as you would think. Given this trade can't happen until after June 1st anyways, with the contract situation, the cap situation. But I just don't understand why more people aren't picking up the phones and calling for Julio Jones right now.
Yeah, you would think that'd be the case. My argument behind that is just the level of talent you're seeing out of wide receivers in the draft now. I mean, it's very hard to miss on wide receivers, and it's becoming such a deeper and deeper class almost every single year. I mean, last year you saw what Justin Jefferson did. CeeDee Lamb looks like he's going to be great. This season, guys like Jamar Chase, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, all these guys who just look like superb wide receiver prospects. I think that's part of the reason, these guys are sort of cycling almost every single year. Yes, you don't have those freaks like Julio Jones that are different. I mean, he is a difference maker. But the only way I can see, a team offering up a first-round pick for Julio Jones is if you're already at that Super Bowl level and you can afford to lose a first-round pick to get you maybe 2, maybe 3 years of production out of Julio. When I say that, it's weird. For me, you'd think that a no-brainer option for this would be the Green Bay Packers. It seems like a very obvious choice. Julio Jones wants to win. Aaron Rodgers is upset. He wants a wide receiver. It seems like a very obvious fit. It doesn't seem like that's going to be the case, but what I'm seeing, it's the Patriots, it's the Titans that are sort of the favorites here. But even saying that, those two moves don't make a lot of sense for me if I'm Julio Jones. He says he wants to win. The Patriots, we don't really know what they are at this point. Last year, obviously, they had a lot of opt-outs and free agent signings. There wasn't a training camp and whatnot. But it's very hard to sort of say that the Patriots are a Super Bowl contender right now. I mean, again, maybe give Bill Belichick the benefit of the doubt of just last season sort of being a anomaly. But to go from that to that, and then you talk about the Tennessee Titans. I mean, the Falcons arguably took their Kyle Shanahan. He was the mastermind behind their offensive play calling. So who knows what that offense is going to look like? You're going to tell me that Ryan Tannehill is a better quarterback than Matt Ryan? I kind of have a hard time agreeing with that. I mean, they're similar quarterbacks, but I wouldn't go and say Tannehill is a better quarterback. Yes, he's put up better stats, but he doesn't have the benefit of Derrick Henry in the backfield and a pretty decent offensive line to go off of. So again, it's very difficult to sort of dissect that, but those two seem to be the favorite options right now. And again, another argument regarding Julio Jones is, as you recall, a couple of years ago, Mohamed Sanu was the number 2 wide receiver for Atlanta behind Julio before Calvin Ridley got there. And the Patriots gave up a second pick for him. So you're going to tell me that Julio Jones and Mohamed Sanu are the same player that warrant a second-round pick? I have a hard time sort of agreeing with that. And as you mentioned, there's the cap space issue as well. Nothing can happen after June 1st. I'm of the belief that there is a deal that is already in place and it just hasn't been announced yet. And, I think maybe this first round pick has already been decided and it's just these leaks are coming out right now. I think this deal has been in place before the phone call came out. So I think it's something that's already bound to happen that we're just waiting for the June 1st announcement.
Yeah, and I think I'm fairly sure this is the same situation that's going down. Like the Eagles, when they said they were planning to release Alshon Jeffrey, but they're, stating it as a June 1st move. So technically he's still there until after June 1st. So I think if a deal was in place, they could still announce it, like as of today, but it'll just be like a June 1st designation. So I don't think anything's quite done yet, per se. I just think, they're putting stuff out there now to make it more of a market than Atlanta thinks they're getting right now from what they've getting in the calls. So that's why I think they're putting that, they already have an offer with a first-round pick involved in there. I mean, maybe they do. But at the same time, giving up a first-round pick for Julio Jones, for a team like the Green Bay Packers or the Tennessee Titans, the LA Rams, San Francisco 49ers, adding Julio Jones to that offense just go ahead and makes the entire team a Super Bowl contender, which in my opinion that's what you're trying to do. That's what you're trying to do in the National Football League is win a Super Bowl. So if you can give up a second and a third or a first for a Super Bowl now, would you not rather do that than get a guy in the first round or second, third round next year that's going to take another year until he develops into a full-time starter? Why not go ahead and chase that Super Bowl now, which I feel like is what Tampa Bay did. What they did in the offseason last year, they chased that Super Bowl now, and then now they're building off of that and have a dynasty created. Why not, the Green Bay Packers add Julio Jones to their offense and, win a Super Bowl, go to a Super Bowl? And the LA Rams wouldn't surprise me if they go uber aggressive as well. I mean, they've, traded first round picks like crazy already. Jalen Ramsey was 2 or 3 first round picks. They just gave up 2 more for Matthew Stafford. If the number's down to second and third rounds for Julio Jones, it wouldn't surprise me to see the Rams be aggressive and come out and get him. And the same thing I would say is also the case with what we saw last year with Chris Ballard and the Colts. Before the draft, he traded that first round pick and got DeForest Buckner on that defense. Why not do that and trade next year's first round and get Julio Jones to add with Carson Wentz, T.Y. Hilton on that offense? I'm in the strong mindset of adding Julio Jones now should be the top priority for the majority of the teams. And obviously it's sounding like, Julio doesn't have a no trade clause. So he doesn't really have the right to say, where he wants to go to. Um, but at the same time, the Atlanta Falcons, they're not going to ship him to Houston. They're gonna do Julio Jones right, because that's just where the situation's got to, and that's where the relationship is. It's not a Calvin Johnson and the Lions type of situation where the two sides are just hating each other and they just move on at whatever cost. I think Atlanta's going to do right and honor the fact that Julio does want to go to a contender, and maybe it's not in the NFC. Maybe Atlanta is smart about that, trades them to the Tennessee Titans, to maybe the LA Chargers, a name that I think would be very intriguing for him. But Julio, adding him to 30, the top teams, I would say, adding Julio just alone puts them over the top, I would say, in level of offense. And I would say probably 6 or 7 teams right now off the top of my head.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And you brought up a good team, the LA Chargers. There's the saying in the National Football League now, that the way to win Super Bowls is really work off that rookie quarterback contract when you don't have to pay them. You can sort of surround them with these great weapons before you got to pay him that big contract. So if that's what you're talking about, this is the perfect time to do it. Give him that weapon, pair him up with Keenan Allen, get that, pair him with that offensive line now that you're just starting to upgrade with the first round talent. So that's a team that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, it's tricky. I feel like it could be a lot of this could go a lot of different ways, and we may not know about it until next week.
It could even just flat out turn around and bite us on the butt talking about it. Julio just could not produce. If he goes to a different system, goes to a different team, and with his age, with the contract you have, I believe it's gonna be like a 3-year, $60 million or maybe $30 million deal on that 3 years that that they'll have to incur with the contract during a trade. But
as you said, the grass isn't always greener. I mean, Julio Jones put up these numbers, became statistically the best single game receiver with averaging yards per game in NFL history with Matt Ryan. So it's hard to sort of dissect that we've never seen Julio with a different team, but statistically, Julio and Matt Ryan are one of the best pairings in NFL history. The stats back it up. So, he can say he wants to win, but again, it's the grass isn't always greener. You never know what situation you might be diving into. The chemistry might not be there yet.
And like you said a few minutes earlier, just Green Bay is just, it seems like the perfect end all be all of their entire situation going on right now. If they want to make Rodgers happy, they want to make their team over the top and be a contender and get over the hump of the NFC Championship game, they can easily restructure Aaron Rodgers, give him an extension right now. Make him happy with an extension. And then that frees up cap space in itself. You push money aside with that deal. You do the same thing with Devontae Adams, restructure his deal, restructure the guarantees, and restructure the salaries. The salary cap hit, you can free up that $15 million you need this year for Julio Jones, and boom, you have Devontae Adams, Julio Jones, and Aaron Jones all around Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, no, again, you hit the nail on the head. It seems like an obvious pairing, and the only way it seems like to me to sort of fix this fractured relationship with Aaron and the front office there. Maybe you include Jordan Love in that trade. I mean, Atlanta is going to be looking to move off that at some point. It appears that won't be this year or maybe even next year, given the way they restructured his contract. So, that would be a trade piece to maybe have a developmental guy behind Matt for a couple of years. But yeah, I mean, it seems like you said, it seems like an obvious fit that for some reason I just don't see happening, because it seems like it's just excuse my language here, a pissing match between the two sides that just is going nowhere.
Yeah, and then a deal to get Julio with Green Bay, and like you said, giving up Jordan Love, that would be a perfect option for all parties and all things considered. Green Bay moves on from him, clears up their quarterback, controversy that's going on, gives Rodgers a weapon. And then for Atlanta, the whole talk during the draft at number 4 was whether they're going to go with a guy like Trey Lance or Justin Fields to sit and take over. Excuse me. Oh goodness, excuse me. Take over for Matt
Apologies.
Ryan, and Jordan Love can definitely be that guy to take over.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it seems like a good fit, and yeah, I mean, again, the Falcons not taking that quarterback. Justin Fields was obviously, the hometown kid, someone who seemed like an obvious fit in Atlanta. But the Falcons didn't go with that option. Again, maybe that was taken with the knowledge that Julio Jones was not going to be a Falcon this upcoming season, and they obviously needed to sort of replace that production on the offensive side. Although it does kind of make me wonder why you wouldn't maybe. I mean, again, Kyle Pitts is a remarkable talent and could, one of those guys that is just, one of those freakish athletes that you can't miss on. But it also makes you wonder why maybe a guy like Jamar Chase wasn't an option for the Falcons. If you're going that offensive weapon route, they already have a guy like Hayden Hurst. So if you're losing a Julio option, why aren't you replacing him with another receiver? So Arthur Smith loves his tight ends. So I mean, I was always a fan of the Kyle Pitts pick, so I have nothing against it, and I think it was a good pick, even with Julio Jones gone. So we'll see what happens. And I think the Falcons are as far behind as a lot of people say they are. I think this is a team that has the chance to rebound pretty quickly. I think they just need to fix some things on the defense. The offense has never been an issue. It really never has. I mean, the offensive line could use some work, and I think that they're going to be there at this point. They've got two former first round picks there last season who now have a full season under their belt and then can maybe develop a little bit. But the issue's never been the offense; it's been the defense. And you now have DMP taking over the defense, and maybe give them another draft, and teams can recover pretty quickly in the NFL. You can have teams that are at the bottom of the barrel that suddenly shoot their way up to the top. I mean, I'm not going to compare the Falcons to Tampa Bay, but Tampa Bay was one of the worst teams in the NFL, and then Tom Brady came along, and now they're the best team in the NFL. So transitions can happen very quickly.
Yeah, and it definitely seems that Arthur Smith, just listening to him already, his pre-draft, post-draft interviews, what he's doing, the interviews he's having right now during OTAs, the guy sounds a lot like Bill Belichick, and I've always been very much high on Arthur Smith. I thought he was the best coaching hire of this year's cycle, and was really impressed with him. When he was in Tennessee, the work he did with that offense, I was really excited to see him come over now with the Atlanta Falcons. And granted, like you said, 99% chance they don't have Julio Jones this year. But nevertheless, I'm still excited to see what this offense is going to turn into under Arthur Smith and, get it revamped back up this year. And that defense still needs work. It's the Atlanta Falcons. They're always going to have the defense issues, in my opinion. But the defense still, can do a little bit better. But offensively, I think there is a lot to like with Arthur Smith coming in and implementing that new offense. And especially, adding in, we're going to pull up the picture here. You've retweeted it before. The picture of Mike Davis. With the the picture with the legs, never skipping leg day, looking like an absolute monster. He's not quite Derrick Henry in what Arthur Smith had in Tennessee, but Mike Davis had a great season last year with Carolina, and right now he has the full workhorse role and load this upcoming season with Atlanta, because just that running back room is not there with Atlanta right now. So it's very much looking like a Tennessee Titans offense where Mike Davis is going to get upwards of 80 to 90% of the carries this season for the Atlanta Falcons, which might end up making him one of the most underrated backs in fantasy football and the division and the NFL in general. I just think there's a whole lot to like with this offense. And what are your thoughts on it, just as a fan?
Yeah, I'd like to compare the Mike Davis signing a little bit to the Michael Turner signing, over a decade ago. These are two guys that sort of have very similar career trajectories at this point when they were signed. They were both signed at almost the exact same age. Both of them were sort of that backup running back type role. They've had some promise, but it's never fully been explored yet. Both of them are big guys. You look at their legs. Michael Turner was one of the biggest running backs I've ever seen as far as just his sheer leg. He was built like a fullback. And, you look at guys like Mike Davis, maybe he's not as big as Michael Turner was, but I think they sort of of the same nature. They sort of have this untapped potential that we haven't really explored yet because they've been sort of behind. Mike Davis was sort of backing up Christian McCaffrey. Obviously he got his time to shine a little bit, but you're right. I think that was a really underrated signing of this free agency period, Mike Davis, because Arthur Smith's going to run the ball. That's his offense, and he's going to use Mike Davis a lot, whether that's catching balls out of the backfield or running. That's something we haven't seen out of the Falcons in a very long time since, Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman. It's been almost 5 years now since the Atlanta Falcons have had any semblance of a run game. So Mike Davis will add that dimension. And as a fan, I was a fan of this hire, Arthur Smith. I'll be honest, I didn't know a whole lot about him before the hiring happened. I was part of the Eric Bieniemy fan club. He just seemed like the obvious choice. But the more I've read up on Arthur Smith and seen what he did in Tennessee, the more I like the hire. It seems like a perfect fit in Atlanta. And then Terry Fontenot, the new GM for the Atlanta Falcons, he obviously knew how to do things down in New Orleans. So I mean, if he can draft the same as he was helping draft in New Orleans, I think it's a perfect fit. The only problem with that is, you're definitely getting off to a bad start. Not necessarily a bad start, but maybe the fans. It's hard when one of your first moves as general manager could be parting ways with one of the best players in franchise history. And per that same report that you were just referencing, it appears that, again, we don't know if this one's accurate or not, but that report stated that Julio Jones didn't start getting upset until he heard that Terry was fielding calls. So that's not the best way to start off your general manager career. Things were looking great during the draft. I loved the draft. I think they had some great pickups, especially in the later rounds. Kyle Pitts, a guy that's very hard to miss on. So, I like what they're doing. I think it was good to not move off of Matt Ryan this quickly. He's 36 and he's never had an offensive coach. He's never had a top 10 defense. So I think it's time to still give him a shot. And quarterbacks are playing a little bit longer now. So I don't think it's 36 is like that death sentence now to where it's like, we're going to have to move off of him in 2 years. I think Matt's still got some juice left in him.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you there. And Mike Davis, those quads. It's not quite A.J. Dillon in Green Bay, but those things, they can run through a man. They can run through a man. But all this Atlanta's Falcons talk, made me choke a little bit back there a little bit. And speaking of choking Atlanta, let's segue to just keep talking about some Atlanta sports. Miles, the Atlanta Hawks, last night, 57-44 lead at halftime.
Thank you. Yes. And silly me, I decided to talk some trash at halftime thinking the game was over because you'd think that would be a safe lead. That's Atlanta sports for you. They can never keep a lead to save their life. So it's a new series. I do like the Hawks in this series still. I think I still think they're going to come out on top in the series just because of, the way these two teams are. I think the Knicks are sort of built for the regular season. They're a Tom Thibodeau team. They're going to do well in the regular season. And the playoffs start. I think the Hawks have too much firepower against this Knicks team. But it's the series going back to Atlanta. Hopefully the fans will show out and forget about that last game pretty quickly. Especially after the juice of game one. With the Hawks just getting that last second shot by Trae Young. If Nate McMillan did make some questionable substitution calls in that game, so maybe that'll get fixed in game three. I'm not too concerned about the Hawks. The Hawks are a team that in these playoffs at least that I'm expecting them to win the series, but I'm not expecting them to go further than that. So anything after beating the Knicks would just be cake. I think I like the trajectory of the Hawks right now. I think they're on the come up, and I think that they have potential to be a threat in the East right now. So it's just a matter of building off what they have, maturing a little bit. They're so young. But I've been encouraged by what I've seen, and hopefully they'll forget about this next chapter in Atlanta blown leads from last night.
Yeah, and Trey Young this year especially has taken the leap, and especially this week, he's really become the villain of New York. Sold out Madison Square Garden for Game 1 and Game 2, and he was taking the heat of all that sold out crowd, all the fans. The guy even spit at him yesterday. But Trey Young, he's taking it all. 32 points in the first game. He had 30 points last night, and just didn't get the outcome that they had in the first game. But going in, to their, game 3, like you said, now they're going over to the State Farm Arena, and I thought it was huge. What they did the first game, stealing, one of the first two games at MSG from the Knicks. I think it's going to be huge in this entire series. Winning that first one, they couldn't win the second one, but just winning one of those first two was, one of the keys I had for the Atlanta Hawks in this series. And they got that done in Game 1. And from here, they just got to go home and try to build up that home crowd that the Knicks had the first two games, build that up there at State Farm Arena, and, try to get, that on their side this time around for, what is it, I believe the next 3 games they'll have at home.
Yeah, I'll have to look at the schedule. I'm not quite sure myself. They're definitely going to need some more production on the John Collins. He didn't score a single point in game 2, so you can't have a guy that's asking for a max contract in the offseason not scoring a single point in a playoff game. I'm expecting a lot out of him. Trey's been balling out. It wasn't yesterday's loss wasn't on him whatsoever. He played superbly. I think some other guys need to step up a little bit in this series, and maybe Coach McMillan could maybe watch the substitutions a little bit because he made some questionable calls.
And I've been loving, the playoffs so far in the NBA. Love the play-ins. That was a great idea. Loving the fact right now that my Milwaukee Bucks have the Heat right now on sweep watch, and they're playing. I believe right now, I don't know what the score was. We were up at halftime when I looked right before we went on live on the air, but my Milwaukee Bucks are looking pretty good right now. It's going to all determine who can beat the big 3 to come out of the East in Brooklyn, because when they're on, no one's stopping them as of right now in Brooklyn. And so let's segue here, just for the final few minutes we have for the show today, to the MLB. And traditionally on the Slaw Sports Show, I have a lot of friends that are huge baseball fans, but personally, I'm not that big into baseball. But my brother is an Atlanta Braves fan. You're an Atlanta Braves fan. And right now, the ESPN Week 8 Power Rankings has the Braves at 14, and no change right now as of their Week 7 rankings. But the breakout of Austin Riley right now, you're talking about it on Twitter. It seems to be real with what he's doing right now.
Yeah, it's sort of similar to when he came up for the first time out of AAA. He just had this tear where he was hitting home runs left and right. Obviously, I think baseball is streaky, and what he's doing right now is not sustainable. And I'm sure he's bound to slow down at some point, but it's sort of been the saving grace for this Braves offense. You've had guys that have been out or underperforming. Marcell Ozuna is going to be out with the fractured finger, and he's a guy that sort of has been underperforming just a bit for the Braves. He signed a big contract last year. He led the NL in home runs. Ronald Acuna Jr. obviously has been, you can make the case he's the National League MVP favorite right now. Freddie Freeman, not quite as hot as he's been, but still, he's Freddie Freeman. He's playing very well. But, guys like Travis d'Arnaud for the season, that production needs to be replaced. Dansby Swanson looks like he's finally catching fire just a hair. There's been a lot of holes in this Braves offense, and really the bullpen's been the biggest issue for this team. This is a team that had one of the best bullpens in baseball last year, and this season it's nowhere close to that. They had some signings and guys that they let go, guys like Mark Melanson, and they signed some other guys. Will Smith hasn't been quite as good this season for the Braves, so it's been sort of just a mixture of different things that haven't worked. I'm not too concerned right now because it still is pretty early in the season, and baseball is such a long year. And usually the good teams start separating themselves a little bit later. June, I feel like, is really where you figure out where this team is and where they're going. And as of right now, the Braves are in position to take first place from the Mets. So sort of about where I expected, even given the injuries of this team. They still are extremely talented, and I think still should be the favorites of the East. But yeah, I think they're just going to get through some of these injuries and figure out who they are.
Yeah, and I'll pull up here just the current standings for the NL East right now with the Braves in it, and right now they're tied with the Marlins, and this was as of this morning, a game and a half back from the New York Mets, and the New York Mets right now they're doing what they always do. They're in their annual vacation to the IL, the entire group, and just what do the Braves need to do? With the Mets imploding and all their team, their team is just entirely getting hurt, like happens year after year. Here at this stretch, right? Or well, no, we're nowhere near the stretch, but here right now, with the Braves sitting, a game and a half back from first place. What do you see from them that they need to do to come up and take the lead right now in this division?
Well, frankly, I think they just need to carry the momentum that they got from whipping up with I believe it was the Pirates that they just they didn't sweep at home, but they scored a umpteen million runs against them, and it looked like they were sort of catching that fire a little bit, sort of figuring something out. Sometimes you need to have those series against those teams to just sort of let loose a little bit. It was a series that you saw them play that it looked like they weren't so tight. They just looked a little bit loose like they were last year, pretty much all of last year. They just looked like a team that was having fun out there and sort of carried that to almost every single game, no matter who the opponent was. So I'm just hoping that they carry that into this series. They played very well against the Red Sox in their win yesterday. They fell short, but this is a series that I think the Braves really need to win to just sort of carry that momentum into June, get that going, get those early wins going so that they can sort of get a little streaky in June to sort of establish themselves as still the team to beat in the East. So I think this series is going to be huge, especially with a team that's so banged up like the Mets. They need to win it. And so they can't afford to have a series where they lose 2 out of 3 like they did just a couple weeks ago against the Mets. So they need to figure it out fast.
And just it's exciting to seeing what the Braves are doing right now, and early in the year it looked like again that they were going to have 2 MVP favorites in Freeman and Acuna, and obviously you talked about Freeman's slowing down just a tad bit, or rather just Acuna is just continuing on that upward trajectory that he's been on his entire career. But another player that I've absolutely loved, and then I just want to just throw it out there because I always have to every week until he continues to ball out until unfortunately gets injured, is Shohei Ohtani, because that guy is just the essence of baseball, and I love him doing everything. And definitely, when I go out to LA next spring, definitely a guy that I hope to catch a game and watch, just to see him in person. Just that guy alone is just incredible with the LA Angels.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate that arguably the 2 best players in baseball are on a team that can't finish higher than 3rd place in their own division. So what he's doing is incredible. It's you've never really seen anything like this, especially in modern day baseball. But it's just sort of underscored by the fact that number one, the Angels are just horrible. They're not a good team. And 2, no one's really watching it. They're a West Coast team that don't play until 10 o'clock sometimes for folks on the East Coast. So I think that has a big thing to do with sort of these superstars that get sort of lost in translation. Obviously, he's been on SportsCenter, he's been leading it. He's a big story right now. But I think that's a big problem with baseball, and their best player, Mike Trout, has he's been the best player of a generation for the last 10 years. And you could look at a mall and see him walk by and not know who he is because he just doesn't get exposure. He's not on a good team. If he was on the Yankees, this would be completely different. As much as I hate that narrative of the Yankees this, the Yankees that, all that kind of stuff, if your best players aren't on good teams in baseball, it's kind of hard to market them. And, I feel like, or I fear rather, the same thing is happening with Shohei Ohtani. It's just one of those things where he's just 2 superstars stuck on a really bad team, but they're doing incredible things, as you said.
And I always want to ask all my baseball people, people that are more baseball inclined, obviously, than I am. But it seems like the easy thing with Ohtani and the longevity of his career and wanting to establish that would be, in my opinion, moving him into a reliever role or a closer role, because I feel like that's really what's wearing on him, is being a starter. And then, they don't have, the downside of that is they don't have starters for the Angels. So that's why Ohtani's consistently, having to come in whenever he's available to come in and pitch. But the guy's throwing, triple digits every single pitch for, 6-7 innings. And I just don't think that would be sustainable, especially still hitting, still playing right field after he's done pitching, all the things that he's doing. I think him moving to, maybe LA, adding in some reliever or adding in some starters during the offseason and allowing Ohtani to be a reliever or a closer can help, sustain him, not having pitching full on, 100 pitches a game at 100 miles an hour. Just I think could help, his shoulder and help his elbow not, explode again, and help him survive longer in his career.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with you. I don't think there's much to add to that. It's kind of hard to sustain that for me. He's lucky that he's young right now. He can do that, but I don't think that's a very sustainable schedule for a guy like that. Batting like he is and throwing like he is consistently all the time. I think that could lead to a lot of injury problems, and I know the Angels wouldn't want that to happen to their superstar, so they're going to have to probably manage that a little bit better.
All right, and then real quick, Miles, before we let you go and call it quits for this week's episode, the match is officially scheduled for July 6th. Whose side are you on? You on Tom Brady and Phil Mickelson's side, or are you on the side with Bryson DeChambeau and Aaron Rodgers?
Oh, 100% Tom Brady and Phil Mickelson. First of all, I'm a big Tom Brady fan. I like everything he does, besides beat the Falcons in the Super Bowl. But I'm not a big Bryson DeChambeau fan. I'm also not a big Aaron Rodgers fan. I know you're a big fan, but he's a little bit too much of a diva for my taste, and so is Bryson DeChambeau. Dude complains at every second he can, and that video he posted of him doing whatever bicep curls those were was just pathetic. I mean, you can drink 20 protein shakes a day and get big, but your form is just pitiful on whatever the heck that was. I don't know what he's doing. So, yeah, I'm Team Tom Brady, Team Phil, and I'm also Team Brooks Koepka. So, I like the meme.
Yeah, I think the whole world wanted to see, Tom and Brooks Koepka against Bryson, or just Brooks Koepka against Bryson is what we all want to see. Put that, on, make that as like a fight, pre-fight to the next, Jake Paul or Logan Paul main event. Put them in the ring and let them go at it.
Yeah, I wish they could have. It would have been great for golf, I think. I think this is already decent for golf, but this feud is something that I think golf needs.
Oh yeah, 100%. As soon as I saw that video, I was like, oh, this is perfect. Especially the weekend golf had 13 million watching that last round, watching Phil win, which was more than LeBron James' both playoff games so far.
Oh yeah,
in the NBA playoffs. So seeing all those fans watching it, that final round, and then seeing it all just go off on Twitter between Bryson and Brooks, and then now Phil Mickelson getting involved. Now the match has been set up, and Tom Brady's just flaming everybody with his memes right now, which is electric. But it's all great to see, and all great, I think, for the sport of golf.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It's something that the sport needs desperately.
Yeah, well, that's all the time we have, Miles. So thank you for joining. You are the first guest, and I believe we'll make this the official Season 3, Episode 1 of the Slaw Sports Show. I believe you're right, on schedule, so I'll probably just make this one the first episode of Season 3. So it was a great first episode of the season, and thank you for coming on, being the first guest of the summer. It's been a blast, and I had to crack some Atlanta jokes in there, so I apologize for that, but it had to be done. So thank you again for joining.
Man. Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me on.
And then, so again, also thank you for everyone who tuned in to the episode. We'll be back next week, probably back on our normal scheduled episodes on Fridays. Maybe have another thing come out on Wednesday as well. But that's all we got for this time. So thank you all for tuning in. Until